So today I want to talk about accessibility. First of all, my name is Manuela. I am a senior mobile developer at Antigua Mobile, and I'm also co-organizing Flutter Berlin. And you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'm also part of Flutteristas, so if you know a female or non-binary Flutter community member that is not yet part of it, just feel free to notify them. They can just Google Flutteristas and join. So first, I want to start this talk with a story about inclusion. So basically, when I was researching for the talk, I spoke with a lot of people that are in need for accessible apps. And yeah, I also have a person in my family that needs accessible apps. So when I was smaller, I, for instance, like to draw a lot. And usually I showed off my beautiful artwork to all of my family, but my grandfather had a little bit of a different reaction than everyone else because he was blind. And that's when I noticed that my medium, so my artwork, when I just draw normally on paper, was not working with him. So I thought when I saw him write, you know, when a blind person is writing, they usually have a piece of paper and a sharp pointy needle, and they basically make holes into the paper and feel those little bumps. And I basically did that just in picture form. So I basically poked a picture for him, and that was such a big gesture for him because he was always excluded in this activity of me showing my, you know, artwork. And similar to that, a lot of people that are in need of accessible apps can just not use your app if you do not think of accessible features. And no matter who you ask, even like a small child, if they learn something new, they want to be able to do that without the help of others. And yeah, those are the reasons why I got very interested into accessibility, and I hope you're gonna be interested too. So first of all, what is accessibility? Accessibility is the practice of making your digital products as usable by as many people as possible. So that means not just for people with disabilities, but for everyone. So if you think, for instance, of a parent holding their child in one arm, and in the other arm they have a lot of shopping bags, and they're trying to navigate through a new city, and they use like maps. If you don't give them the option to double tap to, you know, zoom in, they will have a hard time to navigate if they have to like pinch, because they literally can't, because both of their arms are currently occupied. And accessibility is basically rethinking usability and benefits all, as I said, also people who might not have disabilities. But yeah, there's also a big group of people that definitely need accessible apps because 15% of people are significantly disabled. That's a number from WHO. And that's quite a significant number as you see. And it's definitely, yeah, a big part of the human population. And if the amount of people was not enough yet for you to be convinced, there's also a law coming up next year. That's the EU Accessibility Act 2025, which states that every newly created app needs to have accessible features. Otherwise, the person that's using the app and can basically report you, and then you get a fine or something. If you are releasing already in the US, you probably know ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. It's basically a similar thing, and they're already in effect, so there are already some lawsuits. So one big one was basically involving Domino's Pizza. Someone who was blind was trying to order a pizza but couldn't, and they settled on $25,000. And a settlement is different than when a lawsuit goes through all stages. So maybe it could have been even more. So to satisfy the EU Accessibility Act and ADA, we need to just remember this combination of letters. and numbers. That's WCAG 2.2 level AA. So let's break it down. WCAG. WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And basically, they have a few principles. So basically, an app needs to be perceivable, it needs to be operable, understandable, and robust. You can read much more about that on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines website, because if I would go through it, it would be a little bit too much. But basically, those are the 4 principles you should satisfy. Let's break down AA. So WCAG has 3 levels of accessibility. A is the least amount of accessibility, and AAA is the most accessible level. And we just have to shoot right down to the middle, which is AA. So, of course, we are at a Flutter meetup. So how is Flutter handling accessibility? Flutter is taking accessibility actually quite serious. So whenever there is some issue open in the framework, usually those get pretty high priority and will get fixed a little bit faster, I think. And that's quite great, of course. And also, if you use any widget that is pre-made from Flutter, like a material widget, it's usually having like a label or a tooltip, so kind of built-in accessibility. You just have to fill it in, for instance, or you just have to use it and it's like already functioning automatically, which is great. And basically, a label or tooltip is giving a widget semantic information. So semantic information is stuff that a screen reader will read out to you when you're, for instance, blind and you're navigating your app. You have to hear what is on the screen, and those are basically the semantic informations, which you can give with tooltips or labels. And when we look at the counter app that we all know very well, I have now added some borders around widgets that we have on that screen. And each of those widgets have a widget node in Flutter, right? And in Flutter, there's not only like a widget tree, there's also like a semantics tree. And when you put them next to each other, you see that the widget tree and the semantics tree look quite different. And why is that? It's because not every widget node needs a semantics node, because not every widget that you see on the screen needs a semantic information. Not everything needs to be read out loud. So if you check again the counter app, you see, for instance, this floating action button with the plus icon. For the person that cannot see, it's not important that there is a floating action button with a plus icon. It's important that there is a button that will increase the counter. So the information about the plus icon is, for instance, completely redundant for this person. So the semantics tree looks a little different. Also, this is basically a chart how the semantics tree is constructed. So whenever we write widgets, we create the widget tree, as I said, and the widget tree creates the element tree. And the element tree then creates the render tree, and the render tree creates the semantics tree, which then converts to the platform-specific objects like UI accessibility, accessibility node infos, or iAccessible. Which is quite neat to know. Also, the platform support for accessibility in Flutter is given for mobile, desktop, and web, which is great. There's just one interesting thing that you will notice when you navigate to a Flutter website. It's that you will hear about an invisible accessibility button, and that you can basically press. And this accessibility button will build the semantics tree. Because for performance reasons, Flutter decided to not build the semantics tree for web right away. They just wanted it basically to be an opt-in feature to make it a little bit more performant. So I created a video just to show you how it would look like with a traditional web framework and then with the Flutter framework. So, let's see.
Enable accessibility button. You are currently on a button inside web content. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space. To exit. Reply an efficient, focused email app, group. Shrine a fashionable retail app, group. Rally a personal finance app, group. Crane a personalized travel app, group. Build apps for banner. Visited link image. Flutter. List 5 items. Link. Multi-platform. Link.
So you see, with a traditional web framework, you can just navigate right away. With Flutter, you first have to toggle it in. So.
Enable accessibility button. You are currently on a button inside web content. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space.
Okay. So basically now you can turn on Flutter Web semantics also per default if you add this line of code to your main function. Yeah. So after I first made this talk, they also added this code and we're telling people about it. So that's quite great. And then you don't have to opt in anymore. It's going to be built right away. So now let's talk about how we identify issues and how we can fix them in our apps. So let's imagine we're all building an app together and we want to check how the accessibility is. For that, we do an audit. We want to see the status quo. We can never do that as good as someone who actually uses the accessibility features, but we can at least try. And I think every developer should know how accessibility features work, just to see if their app is actually working correctly. So for development itself, you can use the accessibility tools package from Rebel App Studios to check for accessibility issues during development. It's quite nice because they will show you with a yellow and black border around widgets that might not have a label or a tooltip, or even if the tab area is too small, they will just show it to you, notify you, you get a message in your console. So that's quite handy, and you can literally it doesn't cost any time to add that, and it will improve your accessibility right away. Then you can use the accessibility scanner from Google Play Store. You can download it and navigate your app with it, and you will see where there might be some accessibility issues in your app. That's also very nice. But today we want to focus on how we can do that with our phones by ourselves. So whenever you want to check for accessibility, please check on a real device, because you can see here that I have the simulator picture screenshot with light mode, and it has nearly no accessibility settings. And on dark mode, you see what countless settings I have. So definitely use the real device to check for accessibility. A quick tip is also that you can add accessibility to your shortcuts, because it can be that sometimes you have to, you're stuck with your screen reader and you want to navigate quickly out of the accessibility mode because you want to get out of the app. So accessibility shortcuts can be quite nice for that. And also to know what we want to check, we need to know what kind of disabilities are in this world, what disabilities are existing here in this world. And you can see there are mental health conditions, mobility impairments, cognitive impairments, hearing impairments or visual impairments, and all of those things need to be kind of checked when you are developing. And it's also like a cross, multi team effort. So that's very, very, it's a big commitment to do accessibility, but very needed. So let's start our accessibility audit. We have here this app, Bear Buddies. It's the app to learn about your favorite bear. And we use this app now to check for accessibility issues. So the first thing we want to check is large font. And large font is probably one of the most used accessibility features that are out there, because you just have to get old in order to use large font. So when I see my parents use their phone, they're using scaled up font. And usually, if you have like an event to check how many people are scaling the font, I can tell you already that it will be around 25% of users. This number is quite consistent over different statistics and different apps I saw. So it's one quarter of your user base that are probably scaling up the font. So if you're interested about that, just implement a accessibility event and check it in your analytics if you have users that use large font. So here we have basically a problem, constraint text. This is basically quite easy to fix, and also the reason is quite easy to guess. Laws of the universe. So if your widget is 500 pixel high, then your text can't be 600 pixel. So it's an easy fix. Basically use dynamic sizing or make it scrollable. Here I of course broke it on purpose, but sometimes you have those kind of cut-offs in like little widgets that you don't expect to make that. Then there's the problem that the text doesn't scale. Why did this happen? Usually this happens because you used rich text or you constrained the text in any other way. Maybe you use a package or something. So for that, you can basically use text.rich instead of rich text. It does exactly the same thing. You just have to probably like change one thing, but then it will work exactly like rich text for you, and it will scale the font up, and also check if you use any package that's constraining the text in any way. That's usually not recommended for accessibility purposes. So the second part of the audit is colors and contrast. So there is a thing that's called color vision impairment. It's basically a condition where people see colors a little bit different. So you see here on the side that there is a true color, like that's how I see colors. But then there are three different ways people can see colors. So you see it's quite the difference between the true colors and the different color vision impairment versions. And you can even simulate that with your phone. You can use the simulate color space from Android, which can simulate this, or you can use color filters of iOS, which also simulate this, and then you can see your app through the eyes of someone who has color vision impairment, which is quite interesting. So let's do that with our bear app. And what can we see? The brown bear and the giant panda have apparently both the same danger level. And when we check and take off the filter, we see that the brown bear is much more dangerous than the giant panda. So little explanation, never show anything that is important just with color. Always use also like text or like an icon or something. Never just one thing, never just one color. Because people with a color vision impairment won't catch the danger of, for instance, the brown bear. So that's good to know for you. Also, as a developer, usually designers think of it, but sometimes if you don't have a designer in your project or your designer misses something, you can notify them and ask for an icon or something. So then there is contrast, which is also super important. Here you can see a visual presentation of different contrast levels. So usually from WCAG, it's recommended that you have a contrast for text that is 4.5 to 1, except if you have large font. So if you have a large scale text, then you can have a color to text rate, like background to text ratio from 3 to 1. So that's also possible. So the next part is screen reader, and screen reader is probably what you thought of when you thought of accessibility in apps, but you see it's much more. And I personally find it very important that we developers know how our users are using the app. So I'm not sure if you know how a blind person uses an app, but I interviewed a person that was blind and was open for me to film how he's using an app. So you can check out how it's actually working.
gerne Zeit verbringen.
So I hope you understood everything. As you see, it's quite fast. And for that reason, you have to be very careful to not overload information in your labels, because otherwise it's just way too much information, and yeah, that's gonna be difficult to navigate. So each thing that you heard right now is semantics information, and in Flutter we have the widget called semantics, which is a simple wrapper widget. So whenever you make something custom, so as I said, when you use like a Flutter, already pre-made widget, it usually has accessibility settings and accessibility capabilities. But if you do anything custom, you have to use semantics widget, and you just wrap your widget that you want to give semantics information to with semantics, and add your label and any other information that you want to give, and then your widget has semantics information. And the semantics widget is quite interesting because it has a lot of properties. And I want to go into one specific one today, just because I think it's interesting, and it's the sort key. It's interesting for me because you can give the screen reader a specific UX. So basically, the screen reader usually goes from top to bottom, but maybe you want to have a different UX on screen reader. Something else should be read first. So you can do that with sort key, and it will basically oblige and read it in a different order. So here is a video without sort key.
Accessibility project. Last. Second. First.
And now I have a video with sort key.
First. Second. Last.
So it's quite nice. You can just change a little bit the UX for your screen reader users. Then you have merge semantics. It's also a wrapper widget, and it's used whenever you want to have semantics node read together. So basically, you can again just wrap the widgets that you want to be read together in this widget and have it read as one. I have again a video made so you can understand it a little bit better. So first, without merge semantics.
Danger level. High. Danger level. High.
And here you can see it makes total sense because you want the danger level probably read with the actual danger level, so that you don't have to navigate twice to get the information that the danger level is high. Then there's also block semantics, which is quite nice if you have something that needs immediate attention of the user. So for instance, an important pop-up. Block semantics will block basically everything behind that widget and will only make it so that you can't, that only the pop-up will be read, basically. So again, I have a video for that.
Warning, bear behind you. Warning, bear behind you.
So you see, I can navigate anywhere else. I can only see that here that the bear is behind me, because it's a very important warning. And then we have also exclude semantics, again, a wrapper widget. If you remember the plus icon of the floating action button before, the icon is not really important. So whenever we have something that is not important, we can wrap it in exclude semantics, and it will be just excluded from the semantics tree. And that would look like this. Ooh. Play, yeah.
Hi bear buddy. Brown bear. Image. Brown bear.
So you see, basically, I skipped the whole text. You would not do that in a normal app, but just to show you how it works. So here I have the vision checklist. So you should perform a test with Android Simulate Color Space or with color filters in iOS, just to check your app if anything is not understandable, if you use just color for signaling something, so you can find that out. Then also check for contrast. You should also considering offering dark mode because it has usually nice contrast for people that have problems with visions. And also check for large font. It is basically the most used accessibility features if nothing is breaking or something is cut off. So just check for that. Also check for semantics. Does it make sense? And also check if your accessibility traversal, so the order in which your widgets are read, is making sense. So then we have gestures. So there was like a statistic made how users hold their phones, and there are different ways one can hold their phones. So one is one-handed, then you have two-handed use, which is like this, and then you have a cradled use, which is like this, like that you hold your hand like this and use your phone. And depending on how you hold your phone, you basically have a different thumb reachability. That's why you will never, never, never see a action button somewhere on the top left, because usually your thumb doesn't reach there. And that's quite a good chart also to think of whenever you program something. Doesn't make sense, like thumb reachability wise, because it's also important to think if somebody has, for instance, not good mobility, how would they use your, app? Because like the top left corner is really like a no-go zone because you literally can't really reach it, especially with the big phones that you have these days. So for gestures, I have also made a checklist. So also check tap target areas. Different design systems have different tap target sizes specified. So for instance, Material Design specifies 48 to 48 pixels and Cupertino 44 to 44 of tap targets. So your tap targets should be big enough for people to tap. And also evaluate your gesture widgets and offer customization if applicable. So if you remember me telling you about the map that the parent might use with a double tap to zoom function or the pinch to zoom gesture, the double tap to zoom might be a better accessibility than the pinch to zoom. So those little considerations in gestures can make a pretty big impact, and personalization is a big thing. So maybe if you don't want this like personalization or this gesture to be available for everyone, you can even make it like a personalization that the user can maybe set that they want to use that gesture in your app. Then we have the cognitive accessibility audit. And for that, I want to show you linscars.com. And that's a real website. It's a real website. And as you can see, there's a lot of things happening on this website. And it's actually often used for UX designers to see what they probably do not want to do. Because this will distract the user. It's a danger for people that have, how do you say it, like epilepsy, for instance, because like if something is blinking like in a very aggressive manner, it can trigger a seizure basically. And also people might get sidetracked and don't know even what they wanted to do on this app or on this website. So just as a consideration, I have also made a cognitive checklist. Maybe you should enabling the disabling of animations. Also check if the content is overwhelming, and also give more time for certain actions. So whenever there's something like, okay, you have 30 seconds left, it's super hard for someone who might have like not the best mobility, or someone who has like even a child that is like screaming or something. Like that's where we go back to accessibility is for everyone. And also think of customization of your app, which also applies to gestures, also to cognitions. Maybe you want to give the user an easier language. So in Germany, we usually have on government website the option to have easier language for people that might not have German as the first language or that have difficulty understanding some difficult words. So they can basically toggle that on and the text will change and the text will be much easier to understand and definitely shorter, which is great. So now that we have implemented accessibility, we might want to test. So tests are there to make us sleep better at night. And whenever we write code today, this code will be legacy code, old code tomorrow, and we might have to touch something there, or we might have to build a feature on top of that. And we can break basically this nicely crafted accessibility that we added if we do not test correctly. So Flutter's testing API has the accessibility guideline class. And with this, we can basically check if our app is complying to the WCAG requirements. For instance, you can check if the tap target guideline is correct for Android or iOS, or you can also check for text contrast, for instance. So this is how a test could look like to test for WCAG requirements. So very easy. And also you can test for overflows with scaled font. You can basically just use media query to scale the text up and run your test to see is everything working correctly. Then you can check semantics of test. So with this test, you can, with matches semantics, basically, you can check if your tooltip or your label is there. And one thing to note about matches semantics is it's not a fuzzy match. So you need to be very, very exact. Meaning this test is probably mostly for main flows. Because those tests can get very long and very, much to write, basically. You can also test the UX for screen readers. So we were talking about the traversal for like people that use, for instance, a screen reader, so in which order the semantic labels are read. And you can also test that with simulated accessibility traversal. And that will tell you if something is not in the right order as you expect it to be. And then you can fix it if it is wrong. And if anything goes wrong while you're testing and you don't know if there's like a property missing or something, you can use debug dump semantics tree. It will just print you out the whole semantics tree of your app. And you can check out if you're missing something, if something is broken, and debug a little bit with that. And then, of course, you can visualize semantics, and that's always very nice to see. So if you use the material app, you can just use the show semantics debugger and set that on true. And then your app suddenly changes and you see how an accessibility technology would see your app and shows you also the semantic nodes. So for testing, I also have a checklist. Use accessibility guidelines API to check for compliance with WCAG requirements. Also test your main flows, especially them if you break anything. And also set the text scale factor for tests to check if the fonts break your applications, because large font is the most used accessibility feature. And now we want to know the process. How can we improve our process so accessibility is not an afterthought anymore and we have it always included in our features? So as I said before, it's basically a whole team effort. So basically it boils down all to communication and awareness, because the whole team or the whole company needs to be aware for this. I was working in an e-commerce store and we had to talk to people that were doing advertisement, because if we have an advertisement about a specific product that it's like, I don't know, 10% off, it needs to be also not just shown on a picture, it also needs to be added like as an alt text into our app. It also has to be communicated to the social media team that it's kind of accessible, that you don't have it only on the picture, that you also add it to the Instagram description. Like it's a big whole company initiative that has to be done. And one thing that can help with that are checklists. And if you check the Flutter documentation, you will see that actually there is an accessibility release checklist also in the Flutter documentation. So if you go through this release checklist, you definitely have already a good starting point on kickstarting your accessibility experience for your users. Also, you might want to do a user test. And as I said before, we as people that are, for instance, not blind, do not know where exactly the real pain points are when somebody is using the app, because we just can't test it. We know where something is. We know how the app is to be used, and it's definitely good to have really some people that need those features to test your app. And the most important thing, if you conduct such a test, is to have a quiet room, that you don't have too many people in there, and that you also have expectation management there. Your app will most likely not work, and you don't want people to be very frustrated about it. And also very important, pay the test persons, because often like user tests are unpaid. And I think if somebody is coming to your office and testing your app, you should give them definitely some kind of payment as a thank you. And also I have a design checklist done, because you have to work very closely with designers when it comes to accessibility. You need a sufficient contrast. You need a good color palette. The tab areas need to be big enough, and the designers have to tell you, please tell me what should happen when a user turns on large font. Also, definitely, if the UX needs to be specific, tell us how would you want the screen reader UX to be. So things like that needs to be talked with a designer, and that's actually quite a significant part of the work, and it will definitely increase design's workload for sure. Then during development, use the accessibility scanner during development or accessibility tools package, and write tests to be able to refactor with confidence. So code that you write today, tomorrow you will touch. So better test so you don't break anything. And then our great QAs, they have to, of course, test everything. If keyboard accessibility is working, if voiceover and talkback is working, if the contrasts are okay, if text resize as well, and so on. So give your QA a big hug if you are adding accessibility, because it will also definitely increase their workload quite a bit. So we should definitely check that. And the last part of my talk is people, because we're developing for people, and I interviewed some people, and they were telling me a few things that I thought are quite interesting, and might also show you the importance of why accessibility needs to be thought of. So one thing that I was told is that things break sometimes with updates. So Batuan, the guy who was blind and was kind enough for me to let me film how he's using the app, was telling me that he likes Instagram and he likes to post stories on Instagram. But there was one issue currently, because he can only see the profiles that liked his story. He can't see who saw the story. So, and he was like, it's quite interesting for him to see who looked at his story, right? Like you want to know it's something that you posted, who saw it. And I checked it, and it was actually true.
Manuela Rommel updated their story 2 hours ago with a photo. Blue sky. Cloudy. Lamppost. Roof. Window. Story viewers. Story viewers. Story thumbnail 1 of 1. 45 viewers. Button. Settings. Close. Viewers. But delete. But viewers. Heading. Viewers. Heading. 7.59. Jasmine. More. But direct message. Alicia Oganowska reacted with face with heart-shaped eyes. Adult. Logo other. Night sky. Painting. Porthole. Adult. Night sky. Porthole. adult, logo other, night sky.
So as you can see, if nobody reacts to your story, you don't know who they are. So what you have to do, you basically have to click on that profile, navigate to their profile, and then you know who this person is, because then the profile name will be read out, which is quite unfortunate, and it was working before. Also, a new pattern can be a blocker. So while we were interviewing and he showed me how he's using apps, he was navigating to YouTube and there was this YouTube Premium ad, which was kind of new for him. And he was struggling a bit to navigate out of there. And you will see that.
Wiedergabe. Volle 1 Monat. Musik. Musik Downloads. Hol dir eine eigene App. 1 Monat Test. 1 Musik. Hol dir Music.
So that's just a consideration. It's not always, preventable, but every new pattern that you add can be a blocker for someone who is using screen reader. Then I get inventive when an app is not accessible to perform an action. So I'm not sure if you know Snapchat, but it's like a big social media app where you can add friends to chat with them. And currently, you're not able to add friends on Snapchat with a screen reader turned on. Because basically, the moment you navigate on that friend side, you cannot do anything anymore. And the whole point of Snapchat is adding friends, talking with them. So the main reason, the main flow of the app is broken. And that was apparently also not like that before. And probably somebody broke something while developing and adding something. And I, of course, tried that out as well.
New friends, add friends. Chart, chart, screenshot, chart, screenshot, chart, screenshot, chart, chart, screenshot, chart.
So you see, I could do nothing on the screen. And why does he get inventive? He told me, Manuela, you know what? I have the best trick when I have an app like that. What do I do? And then he showed me how he killing an app. So basically, his trick to get out of the screen is to kill the app and not to open the app anymore and not to use the app anymore. And that kind of broke my heart because it's funny also, but also it broke my heart because he just wanted to use the app and, connect and talk with friends. But yeah, that's not possible for him. So he's excluded from that experience. And with this talk, I basically wanted to mostly inspire people to not just talk about accessibility, but actually also implementing it. Because a lot of people know that this is an issue and know that it has to be done, but very little people are actually like developing and writing code. And I think with so many smart people in the Flutter community, we will be able to have much more interesting ways of solving accessibility issues in the future. So I invite you to join the discussion, and I thank you so much for your attention. And I have here a QR code with which you can find more accessibility content. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.